Welcome back, everybody. It is time for another edition of Slam Talks Sports. I'm, of course, Slam, Mr. Darcy Duncan, and I'm here to unpack, unfold, and dig into a big round 20 of AFL action. We had the Hawks take down the Blues last night, the MCG, to the tune of 24 points. That wasn't unexpected. But before we get into all the footy action, I must talk about the news last night. Of course, the Hulkster, yes, Mr. Hulk Hogan, passed away at 71 years of age. Terry Bollea, as he was known to his friends, was an iconic wrestling figure, probably the most influential and popular wrestler of all time. This is the man that took wrestling from local to national to global. Okay, he was the man that Vince McMahon said, when we take over the territories, we're going to take over all of America, then we're going to take over the world. I'm going to do it with you as my main event, as you as my star attraction. Of course, the Hulkster iconic matches, WrestleMania 3 against Andre the Giant, the body slam when he slammed the big man. Also, WrestleMania 18, the rare double turn when he faced The Rock. The Rock was the good guy, Hulkster was the bad guy, but the crowd loved Hulk Hogan so much in Toronto, in Canada. The Hulkster became the good guy by the end. A very influential figure, but also a controversial one. Over the last couple of years, the last 10 years, we've had a couple of controversies go down the Hulkster's way. It's kind of like our Warwick Kappa in the wrestling community. He had a sex tape, yeah, similar to the Cappuccino himself, Warwick Kappa. The Hulkster had a sex tape, and there's some stuff that said on that sex tape which didn't sound very good. Racist shit, as I must say. And, well, Hulkster had a bit of a fallout from that. He left really public life in terms of wrestling. He wasn't invited back to the WWE. He came back in more recent years because he's such an influential and popular figure, but it is a complicated history with Hulk Hogan and his racist past. Let's just be honest. He has some skeletons in his closet, but also he is the most influential and important figure probably to the 80s in wrestling. He was the man. He put him on the map globally, and he's always been remembered as a great figure for wrestling fans. The other shit, well, that's probably stuff for another day, but condolences to the Hulk Hogan family. This is the Bollea family, obviously grieving right now, and all the whole wrestling community, especially those that grew up loving Hulk Hogan. He was their idol. He was the man, eat your vitamins, take your peptides, and get juiced. I think that was his slogan. I'm just joking. I'm not trying to speak ill of the dead. Hulkster was an icon. He didn't put over Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam, which is why I didn't like him. But a lot of people loved Hulk Hogan and what he brought to themselves, their family, their living room, and the entertainment and joy he brought into their lives. So he will be missed by many. Let's look forward to the footy. Let's start with Thursday night football. We had Carlton taking on the Hawthorn Football Club. Let's look at the stats from last night's game. Now, it was a 23-point margin in the end. And particularly what stood out to me was the back half game from Hawthorn. So obviously, James Sicily, Jack Scrimshaw, Tom Barras, Josh Battle. They had strong games, particularly Sicily, 130 Supercoach points, 11 marks. That is very nice to see, and 25 disposals. He really commanded the back line with Scrimshaw coming back in last week. It allows him to play as that fourth tall. So often in the start of the year, we saw Sicily, I'm not exposed, that's the wrong way of putting it, but missing kicks and really not paying attention to his man. Now, he's playing as a loose interceptor, halfback flanker. That's his easiest role he can play. That is the role that made him great, which made him so damaging and effective as a defender in the Hawthorn scheme. It is not playing on the likes of Jesse Hogan. It's not playing on the likes of Jeremy Cameron. It is playing loose behind the ball and having an impact in that way. He was great to watch last night. So was Tom Barras, and so was Josh Battle. They're such a connected defensive unit, and there's a reason why I still believe in the Hawks for 2025, because their defense is so strong. In the forward half, of course, you had Ginnivan kick that great goal and do the Sally at the start of the game. But more importantly, it's the evergreen Jack Gunston. What a great lead-up player he is. He kicks out a couple of goals last night. Kel Shadir takes some great marks, unfortunately, on the retiring Sam Doherty's head, which was awful to see, but also great to see at the same time because it's such a brilliant mark. And, of course, Mitch Lewis now fully returned from his ACL injury he suffered last year in his second game back, took a nice contested mark in the fourth quarter against Nick Hayes and really showed he could be a force to be reckoned with over the last few months of this season. For the Hawks, they've got some bigger tests ahead. Let's be serious. Adelaide next Friday night. Collingwood the week after that, Melbourne the week after that, and of course a massive game against the Brisbane Lions at the Gabba to finish off their season. Carlton, well, it was more of the same. I don't want to come on here and say the same shit about Carlton every single week. It's the disconnection between the midfield and the forward half. It's the lack of the quality of their entries in particular. How often do Carlton just kick it about 48 metres out on Tom de Koning or Moya or Curto or Mackay's head saying, I'll go fish that up. Go get that, okay? I'm under pressure. I'm just going to boot the ball. You figure it out when it's 48 metres out. Or you get a player marking at 55 out saying, oh, I could hit up a little lead-up target, but there aren't many I really like. Let's kick it deep to the goal line so it's unmarkable. The worst entry in football. One of my bugbears. Carlton are one of the prime candidates or one of the biggest exponents or one of the main culprits of using the football in such a terrible way. It's like watching Melbourne. Last week, watching Carlton Melbourne was like watching two versions of a shit side, and the shittest version is actually Essendon, who I'm not going to talk about right now. But yes, Carlton are just sort of getting through this season. Hopefully they can figure out their kicking issues next year. Nick Newman comes back from injury. Jacob Smith hopefully gives them a little bit of a different look in the midfield and the forward half. Sam Walsh hopefully gets back on the park next year. Tom de Koning obviously leaves through free agency. So a couple of different little magnets they can move next season, but at large, Carlton have issues to fix, which can't be fixed in the next 4 weeks. They must be fixed this off-season. If they're truly to get anything out of this golden era of top draft picks and Brownlow medal winners. Also, farewell, as I said, to Sam Docherty. What a great player he's been for the Carlton Football Club. You know what's crazy? I looked at Sam Docherty's age, and he's younger than me. What? I was born a week before Sam Docherty. And look at me, and look at him, okay? I look like I'm 40. Sam Docherty looks like an absolute warrior. He risted his neck, his skin, his knees, his 2 balls for the Carlton Football Club. What does he have to show for it? A goal in the second half, which was very nice to see. Love you, Sam Docherty. Okay, that's enough on last night's game. Let's look forward to Friday night football. And luckily, we've got 2 games. Great. One of them involves the Essendon Football Club. Essendon taking on the Western Bulldogs at Marvel Stadium. The Zirians are out. In comes Saad Al Hawley for his first game since he got dropped against the Dogs a couple of months ago. Well, he was benched indefinitely and did his hammy in the VFL. So I'll say he was dropped after his Doggies performance, which was pretty unfair. In comes Nate Caddy and in comes Todd Goldstein. Out goes Xavier Dersma, who's a little injured. Out goes Archer May, who's been omitted for the expense of Liam McMahon, effectively. And out goes Big O Vincentini, who got monstered by Kieran Briggs last Thursday night. In for the Western Bulldogs comes Jed Buslinger. In comes Oscar Baker, Ginger Baker himself, playing the drums for Cream. Out goes Liam Jones, and out comes Sam Davidson, who was a supplementary selection player and a great Supercoach selection as well earlier in the year, but unfortunately he's been dropped for this crunch game for the Western Bulldogs. The line is 52.5 points. I'm not going to make a case for the Bombers. I simply can't. Since Luke Beveridge has become coach of the Western Bulldogs in 2015, Essendon have 2 wins. 2. That is diabolical. We are the Doggies' bunnies. They go out, they chase us around, then they rip us apart. I mean, it used to be likes of Josh Dunkley kicking us in the teeth, in the tits, pretty much repeatedly for 4 quarters. Now it's Ed Richards. Now it's Ballydale. Now it's Joel Frazier. And of course it is Marcus Bontempelli. Jeez, like Essendon, they lost by 91 points last time they played the Dogs. And Essendon were pretty healthy that day as well, which is the sad part. Since Beveridge has become coach, Essendon have lost to the Dogs by 80 or more 3 times. 2 of those have been since 2019, so it's not like it happened a long time ago. I think the Bombers will lose by about 70 points tonight. I'll be there because I am a nuffy and I'm missing quite a few brain cells. A couple of screws are loose. I've just got something wrong with me, okay? I love watching Essendon. I just love watching Essendon. That's my community. That's my religion. That's family. Now, it's not a good family. It's a pretty broken home, actually. I get abused consistently by this club, by my friends, by the fans of this show who just say Essendon are a piece of shit. We respect what you're doing, but man, how do you do this week in, week out? And I tell them I feel nothing. I am absolutely dead inside. So when Essendon lose by 80 points, I just brush my shoulders off. I go home, I make a hot chocolate, and I cry myself to sleep. And we do it week and week after week after week. And luckily the season's over in 5 weeks, so I don't have to worry about it too much. On the betting side of things and the Supercoach side of things, which I'll get to in a little bit of a second, I don't mind Ed Richards for 25 plus disposals. I mean, Ed should absolutely dominate the Bombers. Bombers never tag. They might actually be trying to lose this one. Ed Richards is the youngest of their midfield brigade, which constantly plays on the ball. I mean, Bont and Liver are a little bit older, I worry about the older players heading into a 6-day break against the Giants, which is their biggest rival, I would say, the Giants, and which is a crunch encounter for the Western Bulldogs. I'm not saying they'll take the Bombers lightly, but I could see a scenario where Bont and Libba have their feet up on the bench with 10 minutes left, because Bont was icing his calf last week, the calf he tore in the preseason. He's obviously not injured. He's probably going to have a big game against the Bombers. If you don't have Brody Grundy, he's your obvious VC, still against a very derelict Essendon Football Club. But I do see a scenario where they don't get high touches tonight. I like Ed Richards. The Bombers, I'm not going to advocate for any of their players because they are absolute dog water at the moment, but we know the Doggies have been susceptible to key forwards kicking bags. So Peter Wright and Nate Caddy are both about $2.30 to kick 2+ goals. Peter Wright kicked 2 against the Giants last week in a game Essendon were dominated throughout, but they only lost by about 44 points in the end. He still kicked 2. He could have kicked 3 or 4, so don't mind the odds on the Bombers players tonight. But yes, I think I think the Doggies will take care of business quite easily at Marvel Stadium. You can all turn it off by halftime to watch the Giants. See, that little segue, I didn't mean that, but it worked out in the end. Let's look at the other game on Friday Night Football. In the AFL's infinite wisdom, they decided to put 2 games on at the exact same time. Now, we have the Giants taking on the Sydney Swans at NG Stadium in Western Sydney. Now, we've got an absolute triple threat coming in here. This is like Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and The Rock. Okay, this is Sam Taylor, Josh Kelly, and Jesse Hogan all coming in for the Giants. Out goes Lee Kaliev, out goes Harry Ralston, and out goes Matt Gruzevsky. For the Sydney Swans, in comes Tom Papley, who's come back much sooner than expected from his injury. In comes Aaron Francis, the former top 10 pick from the Essendon Football Club. Out goes Peter Laddams, who gave Grundy a little bit of a chop out in the ruck and in-game chop out. I mean, he rucked the majority of the last quarter, Peter Laddams, while Grundy rested at full forward. And out goes Riley Bice, who's been a tremendous Supercoach selection for many people this season. Now, the line, as I said, is 10.5 points the Giants' way. The Giants kind of need this victory as well, as much as the Sydney Swans do. Now, we know the Swans have to win every single game effectively and get help to make finals. If they want to take the spot of a Hawthorn or even a GWS or a Gold Coast, they need to win a game like this. Conversely, the Giants want to solidify their spot in the top 8. They want to play Big Brother. The Sydney Swans have beaten the Giants 5 times in a row, including last year's qualifying final where Isaac Heaney became Harry Potter. He became a wizard because at three-quarter time or even half-time, the Giants looked in control. Then Heaney did stuff that I've only seen from the likes of James Hird or Gavin Wanganeen. He kicked goals from halfway. He was turning on a dime, breaking people's ankles. He's such a great player. He kicked, 5 goals the other week as well. Tremendous player is Isaac Heaney. In terms of the matchups tonight, I mean, probably going to stay away from Lachie Whitfield in Supercoach and in the betting advice, just because James Jordan has done a job on him in the past. We know Lachie is such a damaging player, but doesn't necessarily respond well to a tag, so I probably would stay away from Lachie if you're looking to trade him in, even though he is very, very, very cheap. I probably wanted the 100 last week against the Bombers more than I want to trade him in this week at 460-ish thousand. And of course, Braden Campbell has been known to play a little bit of a role in the past as well. He can go to your halfback flankers. He could go to someone even at half forward and play a defensive role. I don't know whether he will go to anyone tonight, but there's always the option because Sydney do like to play shut down and run with rolls, which really hurts for you when it comes to gambling. And in Supercoach, betting-wise, as I just mentioned, I don't mind Mills 20, I don't mind Goulden 20, I don't mind Blakey 20, I don't mind McInerney 20 is a bit more fringe because he hasn't gone 20 plus any of their losses. So their only loss in the last 5 weeks was with the Western Bulldogs. He went below that 20-point mark. When they've won these games, he's been involved as a high half forward. He's gone above the 20 disposal mark. So I'm probably not so sure on him. Blakey, Goulden, Mills, these guys have 20 every single week, just about. Goulden was bang on 20 last week. He had a very low output last quarter, but I still like all these players and what should be a tight contest to get these disposals. Having said all of that, I still like the Giants to win, just because I think their forward half will be too much for the Swans. I see the Swans' defence here on my screen. Dane Rampy, undersized. Malakin, not their first choice defender. Tom McCutton, obviously still dealing with concussion. And Joel Hamling is on the interchange bench as a backup defensive option. But, Toby Green, Darcy Jones, Aaron Cadman, Jesse Hogan, Jake Stringer, and Callum Brown. I just think that front six is as good as any front six in the AFL, and they'll really struggle to contain them in a game the Giants desperately need to win. Goals-wise, when it comes to bets, I mean, Cadman for 2+, is like $1.80. And Toby Green for 2 plus is $2. Now, Cadman's kicked 17 goals in his last 5 games. Now, Hogan's missed some of those, but still 17 goals in 5 games is pretty good. And Toby Green has kicked 9 in his last 4 games. So they're both going at 2 plus a week. If you're interested in goals, those are the ones I'll be betting around in this one. Let's look forward to... VC-wise. Obviously, I'm going Brodie Grundy tonight as my VC in Supercoach. Now, Bont versus Grundy. Bont's got the easier matchup for sure, but Kieran Briggs hasn't been particularly restrictive to Ruckman over the last 2 months. Grundy's in some sort of stupid form. Like, he's in better form than he was in 2018 and 2019 when he was All-Australian, and he won the Herald Sun of Player of the Year back in 2018. He's in better form now than he was then, so I can't go past Grundles, particularly after picking him up for over 700k in Supercoach. He has to be the one for me tonight. Let's look forward to Saturday afternoon football. Now, this is a big round of footy. It's a big round because we've got some big rivalries. Obviously, we had the Sydney Derby. We have the Sydney Derby tonight in Sydney. Friday night football only on K1 Foxtel. Can't make sense of that one. But also, we've got the Q Clash. Now, the Q Clash, obviously, is between the Gold Coast Suns and the Brisbane Lions. The margin is only 8.5 points Brisbane Lions way. Now, Gold Coast have had a good record against Brisbane in the games at the Gold Coast. But I just think Brisbane are more progressive. Brisbane are playing much better footy right now. And Brisbane can come top. Brisbane have the opportunity to come top of the ladder, which Gold Coast definitely do not. I mean, less than won every single game, but the Gold Coast run a little bit tougher, and they don't quite playing as good a football right now. Dan Rioli comes out with an injury. Let me get into the ins and the outs of this one, which is 1:20 start time at People's First Stadium between the Suns and the Lions. In for the Gold Coast Suns comes Sam Collins, their brilliant defender who's missed the last couple of weeks. In comes Lachie Weller. In comes Alex Davies. In comes Jai Farah. And in comes Nick Holman. Out goes Daniel Rioli, who will miss the next 4 or 6 weeks with a little break in his leg. Ooh, that's not good. Out goes Ben Jepson. Out goes Jed Walter, the former top 3 pick from the national draft a couple of years ago. Ooh, that's interesting. Out goes David Swallow. And out goes Sam Closey. For the Brisbane Lions, in comes Connor McKenna and Zach Bailey, 2 premiership players from last season. Out goes Kai Lohman. I'm not sure what's wrong with Kai. It doesn't say on the app here. And out goes Bruce Reville. Bruce. It is Will Ashcroft's 50th game. It's also Tim English 150th game tonight, which I didn't mention. Now, I'm a big backer in Brisbane right now. I think Brisbane's front half is so dynamic with their half forwards to get up the ground. I'm talking about Zach Bailey. I'm talking about Archie. I'm even talking about the likes of Cam Rayner, who's having a great season. They'll really challenge the Suns' back 6. Now, obviously, Collins comes back in. He's a great defender. But, geez, I know Bodie Hewland's a good defender, but I don't know how many other good defenders are in the back 6 for the Gold Coast Suns. Mac Andrews in shocking form. Joel Jeffrey's going to play a very attacking game. So will Will Powell. So will John Noble, particularly with Dan Rioli out. So while they might get disposals, I don't know how they're going to defend going the other way. I like the Brisbane Lions, who are in tremendous form, to take care of little brother in this one. Disposals-wise, I don't mind Lachie Neale and Will Ashcroft once again. With Will Ashcroft, his 50th game, but more so, it's going to be wet. It's going to be wet conditions on the Gold Coast, and the Suns haven't played well in the wet this season. They lost to Fremantle on the Gold Coast in a wet game a couple of months ago. I expect Brisbane to win on the Gold Coast in these similar conditions because they've played well in these conditions all year. I think they're 3-0 in wet games, while the Gold Coast Suns are 0-3. That enough is for me to pick the Lions in this one. I think Neale and Ashcroft will have decent disposal games. I'll be betting the under total points, and Matt Rowell I'd be avoiding in my bet just because Josh Dunkley has done a number on him in the past. This is Matt Rowell's last 5 games against the Brisbane Lions. 16 touches, 21 touches, 16 touches, 19 touches, 18 touches. Matt Rowell had a great game last week and the week beforehand. Last week he was really good against Adelaide, and the week beforehand against Collingwood Football Club on Friday Night Football. But I just don't see him as a decent bet on Saturday afternoon, just because Josh Dunkley's done some tremendous jobs on him in the past, and he's struggled traditionally against the Brisbane Lions. Let's move forward to the next game, which is it's over in Western Australia. It is the Fremantle Football Club taking on the West Coast Eagles. Now, the teams are in for this one. In for Fremantle, we've got Isaiah Dudley and Neil Erasmus. Out goes Matthew Johnson, who suffered an ankle injury last Sunday at the MCG against Collingwood, and Corey Wagner is also out. And for West Coast, in comes Archer Reid and Elijah Hewitt, who's shown some really promising signs this year. Elijah, who was rested last week for the belting they suffered from Richmond. Out goes Jack Williams, who played an hour of football, didn't touch the ball. He did almost the full Darcy Tucker. I mean, the full Darcy Tucker is about 3.5 quarters of not touching the football. Jack Williams was approaching that. West Coast said, no, we're not going to give you the full Darcy Tucker this experience this week. We're going to sub you off and then drop you, unfortunately. And out goes Jack Petrocelli. Meek, the road runner, is running all the way back to the waffle this weekend. Now, the margin, or the line, is 51.5 points. Freo looked so good last Sunday against Collingwood. The scores from the back half were there. They're more aggressive with their kicks. They were able to win it tight in the contest, and their pressure was fantastic. Considering what West Coast produced against Richmond last Saturday night, I think that line of 51.5 is in danger. Freo might be looking for a little bit of a fill-up. Now, I think it might be... Let me actually check the conditions on this one. If you can see my laptop, you can see I'm checking the AFL weather report. Now, I don't think it's going to be too wet in Perth. I know these other games got showers scattered throughout. So if we go to Perth, it is partly cloudy, should be fine, which is why I don't mind Freo to win by 10 goals. I mean, seriously, I think Freo will probably pump West Coast. They're in a much different phase of their development. Freo are contending for a premiership. West Coast are contending for priority picks. That is just reality. And unfortunately for West Coast, it will be a beat down at Optus Stadium. Not going to spend too much on this game. Betting-wise, I mean, Brayshaw, 25 plus. He didn't get it last week. He copped attention from Ned Long, so he was able to be a bit more curtailed, his influence in the midfield. West Coast don't do such a thing. They allowed Hopper and Taranto to have 30 plus each. I think Brayshaw is a much better player than both those fine gentlemen, so I think Brayshaw at 25 plus seems like a nice bet. Sarong, there's no odds on Sarong. He's about $1.12 to have 25 plus touches. Really no point, even though Sarong will probably approach the 30 disposal mark. Now, goals-wise, I didn't mind Jai Amos. You see Amos there. He's kicked 2 goals back-to-back weeks. He's getting the opportunities. Paddy Voss kicked 6 last week. Now, Paddy Voss ain't going to kick 6 most weeks. Also, Josh Tracy won't likely kick 0 goals most weeks either. But at $2 in a game that could be a blowout, I don't mind Jai Amos, who's an accurate kick, to kick 2 goals. Freo, I like Freo. I like what they're doing. They've won 7 of the last 8 games. They've got some good victories along the way as well. They've beaten Gold Coast away. They beat GWS away. They beat Collingwood away. Just to name a few. These are the teams that are going to be playing finals, and they've got the belief they can beat them outside Perth. And now with Freo's golden run, they play West Coast, they play Carlton and Perth. I don't think they leave Perth for the next 3 weeks. They've got a chance to really move up the table and secure a home final, which would be crucial for them going forward. They can have at least one home final win. We saw what Brisbane did last year, having that home final against Carlton, able to smash them, then win away at GWS, then win away against Geelong at the MCG. It can be done. It just requires to win some games throughout the year and have that belief throughout the playing group. Let's move forward to Saturday night footy. Now, we've got 2 games on Saturday night. The first one we're going to talk about is at Marvel Stadium. It is North Melbourne taking on Geelong. In for North Melbourne, Zane Dersma, Finbar Maley, and Robbie Hanson Jr. Out goes Cooper Harvey, who has an illness. I picked him up in Supercoach last week. I'm very smart. Out goes Callan Coleman-Jones, who got unfortunately injured in his first game back for a while, and Will Phillips has been dropped. Geelong have done absolutely nothing because they're Geelong. They don't need to do anything. The one name I'll be monitoring is Tom Stewart. He was named at centre half back. Last time he suffered a little knee injury, he was named, and then he missed about 3 weeks of football. So it could be some chicanery and some charades, maybe a little bit of tomfoolery going on down there at the Cattery with Tom Stewart and Chris Scott. We know Chris has done it in the past. Not recently, I must say. Hasn't done it in the last couple of months, but he has been known to play a few tricks with selection. The margin is 41.5 points as I'm reading it right now. I expect the Cats to cover that line. Now, I must say, Geelong haven't played North at Marvel very often. They really haven't. The last 4 times they've played them, it has been at GMHBA Stadium or Simmons Stadium or Skilled Stadium or Shell Stadium or just the Cattery down at Cardinia Park, as they like to say. But also they've played a couple of times at Blundstone Arena in Tasmania. Geelong have won every single one of them. When's the last time North Melbourne beat Geelong? I'm going to give you 5 seconds to think about it. Dun, 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 The correct answer was 2015. In fact, they swept the Cats in 2015. They beat them in Geelong, then they beat them at Marvel Stadium. If you can tell me who was the only player playing in that game, which is playing on Saturday night, I will personally come to your house and make you a hot chocolate, okay? But you got to figure it out in the next 10 minutes before the show goes out, so you can't win. I'll tell you the answer. He's named on the wing right there. It is Mr. Mark Blitzarves. He is the last person to play in a loss against North Melbourne all the way back in 2015, so long ago. Such a dry spell it's been for the Kangas against the Cats. Some of the Bombers who don't seem to beat the Cats very often either. I just think the Cats are playing decent footy, and of course they're looking to build into finals. They're going to make it, of course. Their percentage is going to be pretty strong after playing North Melbourne and Richmond again in a couple of weeks' time. Yeah, the Cats are just too good. They're too skilled. It isn't necessarily Bailey Smith that's doing it either. I mean, he's second or third favourite for the Brownlow. I think that's pretty erroneous. He hasn't had a good month of footy. Not a bad month of footy, but not a particularly good month of footy. I think Max Holmes is their most damaging player, probably alongside Jeremy Cameron, of course, and Grant Myers. They're the players I'll be looking out for to put North to bed on Saturday night. Grant Myers, for mine, is a lock for the All-Australian team. There is no more damaging, silky, smooth half forward in the competition. He's a score involvement king. He's the best kick of the footy, I would say, inside 60, 70. And it's about time he got the recognition he deserves as being part of this Cats outfit, which is consistently playing top four football. For North Melbourne, they've got games they can win coming up. They play St Kilda next week. They play Richmond in a couple of weeks' time. The issue is with North fans, they're pretty desolate and they're pretty down in the dumps because there hasn't been any progression in terms of wins. North Melbourne sits 17th. That's where they've been for the last 3 years. They've been 18th or 17th. They've been in the top three in the draft. Unfortunately, this year, they don't have a draft pick. They gave it to Richmond. So unless Matt Whitlock produces like a top 10 pick, then that trade looks pretty stinky right now. And they've done some other stinky moves in the past. And North fans are upset about it. And unless they start showing some improvement, then they're going to be pretty irate and going to be screaming down at Arden Street. You know, Arden Street's the only ground, pretty much, which isn't closed off to the wider community. The public can go there, they can walk their dog, they can take a shit outside Arden Street's turf, they can leave it there, and then they can walk back to their car, which is parked a kilometre away because there's no parking there. They can be pretty upset about it, okay? That's the side for the North Melbourne fan at the moment, but I'm telling you, it's going to change one day. They've got top picks, they've got good young players, McKercher, Sheasel, Wally Wardlaw, if he ever gets back into this team. LDU's not that old. Nick Larkey's injured. I mean, they've got Tristan Sherry, who'll be back soon. They've got talent on their list. It's just going to take time. And time, I understand, is not what you want to hear, North Melbourne fans. But eventually it will turn. It always turns. Teams go up, teams go down. Okay? Unless you're Geelong, who are always up, there has to be a cycle. There's a circle of life. There's the cycle of a football team. And at some point, it will be your turn to be good. Trust me. Even as an Essendon fan, I don't truly believe it, but it has to happen eventually one day. Let's move forward to the next game. Now we're looking at another game on Saturday Night Football, and of course it is the showdown. We've got Port Adelaide taking on the Adelaide Football Club. Now the ins for Adelaide are 0 because they're absolutely humming at the moment. Adelaide, they're looking for top spot on the ladder. A couple of milestones. Mark Keane, 50th game. Pretty good story, Mark Keane. He's played for Collingwood, went back to Ireland to play a little bit of Gaelic, then came back to Adelaide as one of their key backs, playing an absolute huge role for them down back this year. Hopefully they're going to play some top four football. We can see Mark Keane on the big stage. Also, 100 games for Isaac Cumming. Another shrewd acquisition for the Adelaide Football Club, picked up from the GBS Giants this past off-season. The hard-running wingman's been a nice selection for the Crows, and also Jordan Dawson, their captain, who they traded for from the Sydney Swans. We've got 3 players there playing in the showdown on Saturday night, and it shows how well Adelaide have recruited over the last couple of seasons. Keane, Cumming, and of course the piece de resistance, the jewel in the crown, Jordan Dawson, one of the best players in the competition. Adelaide have done a very fine job in building this list, which is now ready to compete for a premiership. On the other side of things, we've got Port Adelaide. In comes Connor Rozee. In comes Jed McKenty. In comes Joe Berry. Out goes Manny Liddy, the sleeved one. Out goes Will Lorenz, my son. And out goes Dylan Williams. Ooh, the margin is 29.5 points, which seems seems a little bit too much for me just because these games are traditionally close. We've seen so many after the siren victories or games that have gone down to the wire. I'm thinking of Stephen Motlop's winning goal. I'm thinking of Jordan Dawson's winning goal. So many times that's happened in the past when the teams have been pretty disparate in terms of their actual talent level. The games always seem to produce a cracker. Even earlier in the year, it was a close game until the last quarter when Isaac Rankin broke it apart. You know what? Ken Hinckley's record in showdowns is not exactly great. I mean, a lot of Port Adelaide fans, they're just sick of Ken. Now, some love him. Some think he's done a great job for the club. I mean, been there for 10 plus years, a lot of prelim finals, a lot of top four finishes, no grand finals. But if you offer me, an Essendon fan, the last 10 years, we could be playing top four football and playing in prelims, I'd rip off both your hands for that, okay? I'd be like Nick Nolte in Tropic Thunder. I'd have fake hands if it meant we could play finals football and win finals football. But for Port Adelaide, they're a club that demands success. They've won, 50 billion Sandford premierships. They expect to win small AFL premierships. So Ken's record in showdowns is 11 wins, 13 losses. Now, you might think, 50-50, it's not the end of the world. It is in Adelaide. In Adelaide, this is the biggest show in town. There are 2 showdowns each year, each more important than the other, okay? I would say as important. Actually, each as important as the other. And this game on Saturday night is desperate for Port Adelaide to win. They're undermanned. I mean, Connor Rose is injured. They've got a lot of people that are banged up. Miles Bergman is tackling with one arm, or not tackling at all, as we saw on Saturday against Hawthorn. It just is a game that they would love to win, but talent-wise, I can't see them winning, despite the fact there could be a few showers around. I'm tipping the Crows to win by about 24 to 30 points. Not sure on the margin, whether they cover the line, but I'm pretty confident the Crows win this one. Betting-wise, I don't hate Zach Butters for 25 touches. He's had some absolute ripping performances in the showdown in the past. 25 touches for Butters is about $1.35. Not tremendous odds, but unless he gets tagged, which Adelaide don't really do, then I think he's pretty much a lock to have 25 disposals. Also, goals-wise, Isaac Rankin is $1.20 to kick a goal. He's about $2 to kick 2 goals. I know it's going to be wet, but he kicked 2 goals in the space of about 2 minutes early in the year in the showdown. He's a magician. He needs a few opportunities to put it on the scoreboard, so I don't hate Rankin in this one. But of course, I think the Crows are going to get the job done and have a big chance to secure a top 2 spot next Friday night against the Hawks on Friday Night Football. I cannot wait for that one, but until then, we'll talk about the next game. Let's look forward to Sunday football in this tremendous fixture the AFL hasn't stuffed up at all. The first game on Sunday footy is Collingwood taking on Richmond. These are your ins and your outs. In comes Noah Bolter. In comes Steely Green. In comes Harry Armstrong. In comes Jasper Olga. Yes, the rhythm maker himself playing the drums. Out goes Seth Campbell. In for the Collingwood Football Club becomes Insane in the Membrane, Tim Membrane. Tommy Mitchell comes into the squad. Dan Houston, no problems after the 1-week abdominal injury. And Roan Steele. How about that? Collingwood have a player called Roan Steele and a Steele side bottom. They are the Man of Steel. Go see Superman in cinemas now. Out goes Bro McCreary with a little hamstring injury he suffered, even though he's looked very good on Sunday against Freo. Now the margin is 45.5 points. People think Collingwood are just going to roll through Richmond in this one, and I don't see it that way. While I think Collingwood will win, I don't think it's going to be particularly easy. Now, Richmond are playing some pretty inspired football of late. Hopper, Taranto, Prestia, Nankervis, they're leaders. Their more senior players are standing up, and you got the other players that are chipping in. You know, your Sims, your Tyler Young, even your Sam Banks, who I've quite liked this year. They're all playing a role. Even Ryan Mansell playing the role of tearing Nick Martin's ACL. They all do their job, okay, whatever that job is asked to be. And I think they can take it to Collingwood for at least a half. Now, in the second half, Collingwood tend to put the foot down. Nick Dacos just becomes, Ablett Junior mode. He becomes, Voldemort. Like, not in a bad way, just because he's so powerful in the dark arts of winning free kicks and hitting targets. I think Nick Dacos will do what he likes in this game. His load will be managed all over the Richmond Football Club. I don't see a way that Richmond win. Richmond cannot win this game. Collingwood are desperate for revenge after their loss last Sunday against the Fremantle Football Club. And the ins and the outs, Houston's obviously going to come back in if he's healthy. You tell me, Pies fans, does Tim Membry come in for the expense of Mason Cox, who's named deep on the bench right there? So Tom Mitchell come back in, even though their midfield potentially was a little bit exposed for speed against Fremantle? I'm unsure. We'll find out at 5 p.m. On the Richmond side of things, not too many changes after back-to-back wins, I would imagine. Betting-wise, probably just going to touch Dacos. Yeah, probably just Dacos at the 30-plus touches. We saw what he can do when he rolls the half back against Fremantle. I mean, realistically, Nick Dacos is the best halfback in the league. He just doesn't play halfback. He was All-Australian as a halfback midfielder. Should have won the Brownlow a couple of years ago. Now as a full-fledged midfielder, he's one of the most dynamic and damaging players in the competition. But if he wants to play halfback, if he wants to manage his load, as they're saying, as Craig McRae is saying, then, geez, the Supercoach points, the disposals, they're going to be absolutely flowing in the fourth and third quarter. Nick will have his face, his snout, his whole head in the trough if Richmond allowed him to do that. I think him for 30 plus is not a bad bet. Goal-wise, I don't hate my man Lipinski anytime. Now, Lipinski hasn't hit the goal for 2 weeks, okay? So the form isn't there recently, but it's a soft matchup. And he's kicked 2 behinds last week. So obviously he's having shots. He's a great inside 50 kick. He's almost the best inside 50 kick in the league in terms of statistics. So all it takes is one little opportunity to come his way. Bang, goal. It's going to happen. I like Lipinski for anytime goals for my crazy train multi for Sunday, but we'll get to that later in the week. And I'll just cycling back to the Geelong game, to just go all out of joint. There wasn't too much I liked in that game. I mean, Daniel, 25, has had it pretty much every single week. That's not a bad one. Jeremy Cameron, I'm still burnt. We all are from not kicking 2 against the Giants. For 3+ goals, he's like $1.50. He had that at quarter time effectively last weekend. So generally doesn't seem to have any ill effects of the knocks he suffered against the GWS Giants. So those are 2 decent bets. Also, I wanted to mention Charlie Comben from that game. He's $2 anytime. Now, I don't think Comben will actually play forward, but check the team list because he played forward at times over the last 2 weeks. For $2 to kick a goal, it's not bad odds. Potentially even put him in for a second half goal scorer bet if you think magnets are going to be moved or someone's going to be subbed out. But just one to monitor over the weekend. Let's move forward. Also, Nick Dacos, C. I mean, surely if Grundy or Bont fails, Nick Dacos is probably your third best option. Like, out of the whole weekend, he's probably the third highest scorer I could imagine. Third or fourth. The other guy I'm going to mention in just a second, okay? Big old Maximus. Final game of the round, and of course it clashes with the game that just happened. Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense, doesn't it? Having a game at 2:10 and having one at 3:15, both in Victoria. So you can't attend both games. You can't even watch both games. You need 2 screens, or you need to be at one game, have the screen on the other one, maybe even the SCN commentary in the other ear. It makes no sense, people. I just don't get it. Why do the AFL want less people watching their product? Why are they trying to piss people off? Why do we have 2 Friday night games at the exact same time? One of the games is really good as well, and it's only on pay TV. I don't know. I'm giving up shouting on this podcast. I'm giving up crying to the AFL to do something about how inept their fixturing is. But with 5 rounds left and as we approach finals, they ain't going to do shit, okay? So let's just get on with it. All right, this game, St. Kilda, Melbourne, it means diddly squat for everyone, potentially just draft picks for the teams that own their future picks. In for St. Kilda, Zach Jones, Lance Collard, Ari Schoenmaker and Angus McLennan. Out goes Darcy Wilson, who's been dropped once again. Ugh, damn it, my boy Darcy Wilson. For the Melbourne Football Club, in comes Tom Sparrow, Charlie Spargo, Blake Howes, Jed Adams, Harrison Petty and Jai Kelly. A big extended bench there for the Melbourne Demons. Out goes Stephen May, who's serving a 3-week suspension. A bit more on that, though. They can't appeal his suspension until next week. How on earth does that work? The round's already started, and we haven't had his appeal yet. So what happens if he gets off? What happens if May said, oh, you know what? It wasn't unreasonable. You're protecting yourself. What else could you do in that contest? Does he then go back in time and play this game? AFL, just figure it out. Also, out of the squad comes Harry Sharp and out goes Carlton Tholstrup. The margin is 4.5 points Melbourne's way. Pretty much as a pick'em. Games at Marvel, which Melbourne don't play a lot of games there, obviously. I think they play there again next week as well. I think the D's are just travelling better right now. Even with Stephen May out of the team, I could see the likes of Van Ruin, Pickett, and Malcolm challenging St. Kilda's back 6, which hasn't been as strong as it has been in recent years. Midfield-wise, Saints don't have a strong midfield. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean Melbourne's midfield's humming at the moment. Petrarca and Oliver looking pretty old, so is Jack Viney. But I think Max Gawn traditionally dominates Rowan Marshall. Last year they played at the MCG, and I think he scored 180 points, big Maximus. So I could see him having a similar performance on Sunday afternoon, particularly after a couple of tough losses for the D's. Very proud man is Max. He wants that 8th All-Australian Blazer, so I could see him having a big one against Rowie on Sunday afternoon. He would be my Supercoach captain in case all else fails. Betting-wise, well, I want to talk about this. Kozzy Pickett has been having around 20 touches just about every week the last 5 weeks, but the last time he was held well under it was actually against St. Kilda in Alice Springs, where the Saints won easily in that contest, and Marcus Winhager tagged him and kept him to a very low influence. Since then, Marcus Winhager's been playing more as an out-and-out ball winner. He's having 30, 25-ish disposals. I think I like him more in that role, but knowing Ross Lyon and knowing the success he had against Kozzy Pickett, who is probably the most dynamic player on the pitch outside Nazar Wanganeen-Miller on Sunday, I could see him returning to that successful formula and putting more attention into Kozzy. So Kozzy disposals, I wouldn't be too interested in. I wouldn't be getting too invested in that. Goals-wise, 2+ goals for Kozzy and for Jake Melksham under the lid in perfect conditions is $1.70. I'll be more interested in those sort of bets. Disposal-wise, Clayton Oliver, 20+ touches. I don't mind that. He's had it in pretty much every single game he plays. Oliver can't play any other position, really, rather than inside mid. So 20 disposals seems pretty simple for him at $1.20. And also, my man, Nazar Wanganeen-Miller. I've been banging down the door for this guy for about 2 to 3 months. Now, finally, the footy-watching community has taken notice. He is a top 10 player in the competition. He can play just about every position on the ground, and he's an elite kick of the footy. 25 touches for Nas is only $1.20. Probably not enough to get involved in. It's probably too short, even though he will probably get it. It's one for your Sunday train multis, not one for one that you realistically want to lock in at big money, because the odds are just so short. You need to see what the return is on a potential bet on Nazar, despite the fact he is in absolutely tremendous form. I'm still taking the D's in this one to just eke it out, and Max Gawn to put together a masterclass of 160,000 Supercoach points to deliver me into the top 1K. That's it for this week's round preview. AFL round 20, it should be an interesting round. I know the fixturing is absolutely diabolical, and I know there's going to be a lot of blowouts. So just looking at the fixture as I just discussed it just then for this week, start with last night's game. It wasn't a blowout, but we knew that Carlton couldn't win. Tonight, we know Essendon can't win. We know West Coast can't beat Freo. We know North Melbourne, I'm not going to say they can't beat Geelong, but they're very, very unlikely to beat Geelong. We know that Port Adelaide are very unlikely to beat Adelaide. We know that Richmond are very unlikely to beat Collingwood. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games where the result seems predetermined pretty much before it even begins. That's not good for footy. That's not good for interest in the sport. That's just not good for anyone. Okay, that's bad business. And that's partially fixturing, but partially because there is a big chasm this year in terms of the quality in teams. Essendon obviously have injuries. Carlton have injuries. West Coast have had injuries for years and years and years. I mean, no Waterman, no Allen, no McGovern. I'm not saying they should be winning these games. I'm not saying they should be competitive, but it just is it's a bad year for the average footy punter, because the general interest in the 9 games is not there as it has been in years gone by. As we get closer to finals, as the big leverage games come into play, Adelaide playing Hawthorn, Adelaide playing Collingwood, Brisbane playing Hawthorn, Brisbane playing other quality teams, that's going to make us interested. That's going to get us really involved in the games. But unfortunately, at large, the average footy fan has been left out in the cold by the fixturing and by the fact there's so many teams which are uncompetitive week on, week out. That's it for the preview for footy. Anything else on this weekend? I'm watching the highlights from last night's cricket. So, India versus England. This is a great series. India are down 2-1 at the moment. They had a lot of confidence going into this series, as well, with the form of Shubman Gill and the form of their bowlers. But, geez, England trail by 156 while I'm watching this delayed telecast. I think it's pretty close in the end. It'll be something to watch tonight, after the footy wraps up. Besides that, oh yes, there's one thing I want to mention. It is the return of the people's horse. It is the horse of Slam Talk Sports, Mr. Barra Keel. Barra Keel, of course, won the Group 2 McEwen Stakes last year at Moonee Valley. He returns to action in the Bletching League Stakes at Caulfield on Saturday afternoon. Now, the odds are pretty short. He is $3, but we know what a quality animal he is under the tutelage and the guidance of Troy Corstens, and, of course, partially owned by my great friend, I'm not going to mention on this show, Mr. Jack Fenner. He is a tremendous horse. He is a great sprinter and will be aimed at the Manor Carter and potentially the Everest if he gets there in a couple of months' time. One to watch on Saturday afternoon. But again, always gamble responsibly. And at the $3 odds, I'm not that enthused to get involved. That's it for this week in sports. That's it for the AFL round preview. Hope you'll enjoy the footy tonight. Hopefully, get a couple of bets up. Our Supercoach teams perform admirably, and we have a marvellous weekend watching our favourite game, the best game ever invented. I'll see you all next week to talk about all the sports, all the footy. Catch me on all the socials. You know where to find me. Slam Talk Sports on Instagram and TikTok. Darcy_Duncan21 on Twitter. And of course, Slam Talk Sports on YouTube, where you're watching this show right now. Enjoy yourself. Have a lovely time. Spend it with your friends and your family. Enjoy their company. But most importantly, enjoy all the sports. I'll see you all next week.